Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Salt Lake Planning Commission meeting of November 18th, 2020. I'm going to read a statement about our need to hold this meeting as a virtual meeting. I, Brenda Shear, chair of the Planning Commission, hereby determine that conducting the Planning Commission meeting at an anchor location represents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. The World Health Organization, the President of the United States, the Governor of Utah, the Salt Lake County Health Department, Salt Lake County Mayor, and the Mayor of Salt Lake City have all recognized a global pandemic exists related to a new strain of the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. Due to the state of emergency caused by the global pandemic, I find that conducting a meeting at an anchor location under the current state of public health emergency constitutes a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the location. So we are going to now have the report of the chair and the vice chair. And what I have to report is that today is the first meeting of a new team of chair and vice chair, myself as chair and Amy Berry as vice chair. And so we hope that you will bear with us both as we manage to take you through the next few months of the Planning Commission. Amy, do you have a report?
I have nothing.
Thank you. And I know that we do have a report of the director.
Yeah, a couple things. We do have Nick here, and he's going to go into something in just a moment. But first, just a little bit of information for those of you that are out there that are want to participate in the meeting. On your screen, you'll see some directions there for joining the meeting. The easiest thing is to go to Salt Lake City website on the planning page, go to the public meetings, and then Planning Commission agendas and minutes. And at that location, you'll find the links that you need to get into the meeting, as well as instructions for joining the virtual meeting. If you look on the screen now, a good thing for those of you that want to participate is to write down that email address at the bottom, and it's planning.comments@slcgov.com. If there any time you are having an issue with notifying us that you would like to speak, or if you don't want to speak and you would like us to read your comments into the record, you can do so through that email address. We are monitoring that email address and we'll get your email. So it's a good idea if you just write that down now. Marlene, if you're listening in, if you could maybe scroll to the next page. So for those of you that are participating, would like to speak, when your item comes up, the public comment period for your item comes up, you should have a little hand on your screen. When you click that little hand, and that lets us know that you want to speak, and then I will change, when we get to that point, I will unmute you and allow you to speak. Again, if you're having trouble with the hand, or if you're running into any issues, send us an email and we'll deal with it through that. That's all I have. We do have Nick Norris here, the planning director, that does have an item on the agenda to address.
Thank you, Wayne. Go ahead, Nick.
Thank you, Wayne. So as you may recall, in the October, 28th meeting, the Planning Commission approved a special exception for extra height for new construction of a single family home. That decision has been appealed, and by one of the neighbors, and the ordinance for appeals of special exception decisions state that an appeal does not stay the decision unless specific action is taken by the Planning Commission. Those people who have filed the appeal have requested that the Planning Commission stay that decision. And they have provided a letter that's in your Dropbox. And I'm going to try to summarize it the best I can, but basically what they're saying is that there are trees on the property or that overhang the property that are part of that appeal and apparently were part of the discussion. during that meeting, and they have requested the stay to essentially protect anything from happening from to those trees. What a stay does is that it prohibits the city from taking any sort of action regarding the permit related to the special exception. So it means we couldn't issue permits, we couldn't do inspections, we couldn't do those types of things. It does not stay the applicant from doing anything on the property that is otherwise legally allowed. And so that is something to keep in mind. The city does have a tree protection ordinance that applies to private property. And what it basically says is that for new development, you need to protect what's called specimen trees. However, the code specifically exempts the construction of single-family homes from that ordinance. So I just wanted to put that out there so that you're aware of that. So basically, and the reason for that is even if you issue a stay, they're exempt from that regulation. And so they could do whatever they want with the trees on their property without having to worry about that regulation.
Nick, does the stay have a built-in expiration date?
Yep, the stay, if granted, would stay in place until the hearing officer makes a decision.
And Nick, is this an action that we need to take?
It's completely your prerogative. You don't need to do anything if the commission doesn't want to. It is something that whatever your decision really should be a motion and a decision of the majority of the members present.
Thank you. So is there any discussion of this particular issue from the commission?
Can I ask a question for Nick?
Of course.
Nick, what's the standard in the code for approving a stay as opposed to denying one? Do we have some structure?
The code doesn't provide any guidance for decisions related to special exceptions. It just says essentially that a decision on a special exception or an appeal does not stay a special exception unless specific action is taken by the planning commission to stay that decision.
And based on the letter, is the concern with the tree on the applicant's property or the neighboring property? It's a little confusing to me.
Well, I'm not exactly sure. Let me pull up that letter.
Or is it both? I mean, I guess.
So it does say that in the design submitted by Mr. Tice, it appears that a tree on Mr. Jaffa's property will need to be cut back significantly to accommodate the new home. So that sounds like the tree is on the neighbor's property and there's some overhang onto the Tice property.
Right.
Which it clearly is a civil issue between those two property owners about the extent of what can be trimmed or not.
So even if we theoretically issued a stay, the issue of the overhang trimming wouldn't be affected by the stay at all, right?
It appears so.
Yeah, it doesn't appear to be within our purview. It's not related to the special exception.
Right. So does anyone wish to go forward with a stay, or shall we move on with our agenda?
I do not. I would like to not issue a stay.
Okay. Is there anyone who disagrees with Sarah? Okay, then.
I mean, I don't have a problem with issuing one, I should say. The neighbor requested it. If it adds a layer, it was a controversial issue. If it adds a layer of comfort to the community, what was a controversial kind of decision and conversation, then I don't have a problem with issuing one. But am I the only one that is there?
I'm more concerned that the code is silent on whether, what we use to make this decision. And I don't know that we've ever had to make this decision for it, at least not since I've been on the planning commission. I don't know if these have come before you all before.
I feel like maybe it's another one, but I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
remember very well.
But I'm not in favor of issuing the stay if it's, they're trying to get around, or they're trying to incorporate more into the issue before us, which was the special exception for the 9 feet of additional height. I don't want to get into disputes with neighbors about overhanging tree limbs. So I think I'm convincing myself that I'm with Sarah. I would rather, we made our decision, they have the right to appeal it, and it can work through that process.
Okay, as long as the only one that was open, let's move forward then.
All right, unless there's any other objections, let's go forward with our agenda. The first item, we also have, for the first time ever, a consent agenda item. We treat it a little bit like we do the approval of the minutes. So you can see the consent agenda item is Kensington Tower Time Extension Request, case number PLN PCM 2019-00786. We will not be having a presentation from staff since this is a consent agenda item. And so do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Who's that? Sorry.
Crystal.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion from Matt and a second from Crystal to approve the consent agenda. Maureen,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Adrian,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Agree.
Matt,
Yes.
Andres,
I vote yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Crystal,
Yes. Yes.
and am I correct that John is not here? I guess not. Okay. Thank you. The motion passes. And so we will move on to approval of the minutes.
Actually, the minutes are on the consent agenda.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Anybody want to take them off the consent agenda to say anything? Good. Okay, we move on. Our first public hearing, we move on to the public hearing part of the session, is the conditional use ADU at approximately 2321 South Windsor Street. And it is case number PLN PCM 2020-00512. And I believe that it's being presented by Chris Earl.
Madam Chair, can I
Yes.
make a comment? I need to recuse myself due to a professional conflict of interest.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Let me share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, this is a request from Andrea Palmer with Modal, representing the property owner, for conditional use approval for a detached accessory dwelling unit located in the rear yard of the property located at approximately 2321 South Windsor Street. The ADU will be located in the southeast corner of the rear yard and will measure 561 square feet in size, with a height of approximately 11 feet 7 inches. A concrete walkway will be provided, giving access from the ADU to the primary home. Off-street parking for the primary home on the property will be provided by an existing detached garage. Parking for the ADU will be provided by illegal on-street parking located on Windsor Street. This slide shows a design concept for the ADU. The ADU will be covered in a cement board siding and painted gray with wood siding accents on the front. Here are some pictures of the property. The top photo shows a view of the property looking from Windsor Street. The bottom two photos are views of Windsor Street looking north and south. These are pics that show the rear of the property. The top photo shows a view of the rear yard. This area is approximately where the ADU would be located. The bottom two photos are views of the detached garage on the property and the abutting alley. During the early engagement process, staff received a letter from the Sugar House Community Council. This letter contained one comment in support of and one comment against the project. Staff received no public comment regarding the proposal. Staff is recommending that the commission approve this conditional use request with conditions found in the staff report.
Thank you.
That is all I have.
Are there any questions for Chris? Hearing none, is the applicant here? And would the applicant like to speak?
Yes, I'm here. Oh, sorry, Chris.
I was just going to say you were planning on attending, so.
Yes, I am
Okay.
here, and I don't have any extra comments to add, so if any of the board members have any questions, feel free to ask.
Can you just state your name, please?
Yes, Andrea Palmer with Modal Living.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to, does anyone have any questions for Andrea or for Chris before we move to the public hearing? Okay, I'm going to open it up for public comments. Do we have anybody wishing to speak?
Community council?
Oh, yes, if there's anybody from the community council who would wish to speak. I don't see that. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Is there any other, do we have anything? Wayne, are you?
Yeah,
muted.
sorry about that. I was having little issues there. We have one person raising their hand that would like to speak. I don't see anyone from the community council. So we have one person that would like to speak, and then I will read an email that we received. So first off, Zachary, do you want to go ahead and state
Go
your
ahead,
question?
Zachary.
Sure. Zachary Dusselt speaking in favor of the proposal. I think it's nice to point out when ADUs have access to alternative transportation, and this one's a great candidate for that with the, I believe it's the 209 bus route along 900 East with less than a 5-minute walk to the site. And that's a peak 15-minute frequency, off-peak 30-minute frequency with easy connectivity to downtown, as well as very close proximity to the Sugar House Business District with many opportunities to walk or bike to work. And just in favor of this proposal for the same reason. I'm in favor of all ADUs, and I would love if the committee would, or the commission would look into making these approvals easier, as it seems like most of these just come before the commission. They get approved because there's no mitigating circumstances. So I don't know if that's something you guys would like to look into in the future, maybe making these easier approvals and reducing the commission's workload. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. So Wayne, is there anyone else? Would you
I
like to
do
read
have-
the email you received?
Yeah, I do have one email. This is from Dennis Reeves. The proposed ADU at 2321 Windsor Street is an abomination. It will ruin the character of the neighborhood. The unit is way too large for the space available. Modal and the property owner are only interested in padding their wallets. Population density is already too high in the area. Parking is also at a premium. Proposed ADU will just exacerbate these problems. As a resident, I'm adamantly opposed to this. Thank you for your consideration, Dennis Reeves.
Thank
That
you.
is all of the comment. Hold on one second. We have a couple of emails that have come in. I got Cindy here talking about a special exception. Hold on one second. Cindy, can you tell us what project you're here to speak to?
Last item on the agenda, the ordinance change.
Perfect, thank you. That's all the comments I have.
Thank you. So hearing no further comments from the public, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commissions. Does the commission have any questions or discussion of this proposal?
I have a suggestion to Chris, but it will be any planner. So I guess to Wayne, when you take photos of the site and this, and if they're proposing off-street parking, would you indicate the time of day you take those photos? Because oftentimes it looks like there's ample parking, and then maybe there's not if we went in a different time of day. It's just a suggestion I'd like to make. For,
Great, thank you. I'll pass
not
that
just
on.
for ADUs, but for projects that are, you know, having parking as a concern expressed.
Great, thanks. I'll pass that along to our planners.
Okay, is anyone prepared to make a motion?
Madam Chairman, I will make a motion.
Thank you. Let's go ahead.
Based on the information listed in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the commission approve the request for conditional use for an accessory dwelling unit, ADU, at 2321 South Windsor Street, as presented in petition PLN PCM 2020-00429, with the conditions listed in the staff report.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Maureen. I have a motion from Carolyn and a second from Maureen. So we're going to go through a roll call again. Opposite order. Crystal,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Andres,
I vote yay.
Matt,
Yes, sorry.
Amy, I'm sorry,
Yes.
Carolyn.
Agree.
Amy, yes, okay, Carolyn
Agree.
and Maureen.
Yes. Sorry.
That's okay. The motion passes with 7 votes and 1 abstention. So we'll move on to item number 2, the East Liberty Tap House conditional use for a bar at approximately 850 East 900 South. It is case number PLN PCM 2020-00558. And I believe David Gilner is presenting this.
Yes, I am, and Wayne's going to be assisting me. I'm working from a phone. I was having some computer issues, so I'll have him queue up the presentation in a moment. This is a request from Carolyn and Josh Stewart. They're the property owners of the East Liberty Tap House at 850 East 900 South. And this is a request to change the establishment to a bar use. It was approved as a tavern and restaurant license and conditional use approval. And so the bar requires a new conditional use approval. So first slide, please, Wayne. Can we get the next slide, Wayne? Thank you. So This would be a bar use in the existing tavern and restaurant space. Bar is allowed as a conditional use in the CB zoning district. This property is in the CB zoning district in 9th and 9th, subject to size limitations. Basically, the CB zoning regulates the maximum size of a bar as being 2,200 square feet in total, which is further defined to include 1,750 square feet of floor space and up to 450 square feet of an outdoor patio. So the total size they're proposing is 2,160, that's 1,718 indoors and 442 on an outdoor patio. An alcohol-related use has existed at this location essentially since 2014. Next slide. So a little bit of background history. There was a conditional use issued in 2014, which allowed this to be a tavern, which was associated with the restaurant. And then subsequently in 2016, the city issued a business license for a dining club. And then there were further license renewals in 2018, 19, and 20 for a social club, which was a dining club with liquor consumption. Early 2020, the city noted that as they were going through their relicensing, that the conditional use from 2014 was only for a tavern. And so we had previously issued local consent for a social club and a bar over the years when it was only supposed to be a tavern. So there was some confusion between the DABC and state definitions and city ordinance definitions of different alcohol uses. Next slide. So bottom line is the city made some mistakes in the licenses that were issued over the years. The net effect was that basically we had the owners had switched from one conditional use to another use without going through the conditional use process. That wasn't necessarily their fault. They were evolving their business, and we erroneously issued business licenses that allowed some of these changes. So now we're trying to rectify that issue. So this request is to permit a bar at this location through the conditional use process and allow them to rectify the licensing issues with the ABC. So again, a similar use has been in existence since 2014. Next. Really quick mapped location by 9th and 9th. It's a little corner property at the corner of Windsor and 900 South. Next couple slides just show you some pictures of the existing establishment. This is taken from the corner. Shows the outdoor patio, and you see a little bit of the business looking down the sidewalk along Windsor. Next shot is more from in front, which again shows the outdoor patio space, and there's a walkway that leads into the restaurant from there. Sorry about that, background noise. Next slide, again, close up of the patio. So key considerations in this, going to the next slide, was we were looking at the background, history, and use at this location, that they would have a required security and operations plan that has to be approved by the Salt Lake City Police Department and city's building official for this type of use. The size limitations of indoor and outdoor patio space, the neighborhood compatibility, and then those master plan policies and conditional use. Stay on this slide, please, Wayne. The security and operations plan has been filed. We do not have approval of that plan from the police at this point in time. They've had some personnel changes, who is reviewing those. So we are still working on that, and we're including that as a conditional approval that plan will have to be finalized and recorded. The size limitations on the indoor and outdoor space, I mentioned those previously. One of the things we ran into or noticed with this use that the total outdoor space of the existing front patio is 711 square feet in size. So they're going to have to block off portions of the patio. Part of it is going to be designated a customer waiting area, and also subtracting the walkway through the patio where there won't be customers sitting, and a couple other areas where there's some outdoor fire pits. If they keep that blocked off, it would stay within that 400 or under that 450 square foot limit. So we are including also that as a condition, the size of the outdoor patio has to be 450 square feet or less. Neighborhood compatibility, again, given the kind of uses in the 9th and 9th area, there are restaurants and other uses. This use is compatible with the neighborhood uses. There was one public comment that's included in your staff report from a Mr. Parekka, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who is a neighbor who lives on the other side of 900, or other side of 9th, and he was a little concerned about the noise potentially from expanded operations and the hours of operation. Those items are addressed in their security and operations plan, so we're not recommending any additional conditions for those. Next slide, please, Wayne. Staff analysis, we felt that we analyzed it and it meets the qualifying provisions for an alcohol-related use found in 21A 36-300, meets the review standards for a conditional use and complies with the detrimental effects determination. So we are, next slide, we're recommending that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use subject to the approval conditions listed in the staff report. And I have a final slide that has those conditions up. That's all I have. Any questions for me?
David, is there any change in their operation proposed under their new CUP versus how they've been operating historically?
I can let the applicant answer that probably more succinctly. Again, their licensing would change, so it would allow people to get drinks without having necessarily to order food. And of course, the size.
In terms of the usage of the patio, the number of tables, anything, hours of operation, are there any changes there, or should I just ask the applicant?
I believe they're similar to what was approved in 2014, but I think the applicant could answer that.
Okay, thanks.
Carolyn.
I have a question. Do we have to limit the size of the outdoor patio? It seems like that's tough to do in COVID times.
Unfortunately, yes, the CB does have that limit for alcohol-related uses that defines the patio cannot exceed 450 square feet. Although I do realize what you're saying, that in these times we're looking for more outdoor space, but unfortunately that is what is in the ordinance as a hard cap.
Thanks for trying, Crystal. That would be helpful for us.
Brenda, I'm not sure if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Still on mute, Brenda.
They're unmuted.
Okay. Thank you. So can we bring the applicant up?
Huh?
Would you like to present, Stewart?
Yeah, hi, I'm Caroline Stewart. This is my husband, Josh Stewart. And a little bit of background on us is that we have co-owned the tap house since 2014. And in the spring of this year, due to COVID, we bought out our partner, who was the managing owner and operator, and so owners of the East Liberty Tap House. And we live in the neighborhood. We lived in the neighborhood since 2006. 6. Our 3 children go to school in the neighborhood. We just love the 9th and 9th community, and we want to create a respectable, responsible gathering space for people to dine in and get some food and a drink. And I also want to emphasize that there's going to be no change to the operations or the concept of the East Liberty Tap House. In 2018, we were given a DABC bar license due to the fact that the state eliminated the social club license. And we wanted to comply with the 70-30 rule, which says if you have alcohol sales over 30%, you are automatically designated a bar, which is something that we necessarily didn't want to do because that eliminated us from having families and children at the tap house. But we have been a bar and operate as a bar since 2018. And I also want to let you know that 99% of our guests who come in order food, and the majority of our sales are food.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Seeing none, can we move to the public hearing and open it up for public comments? So Wayne, do we have any comments or emails?
I don't see anyone from the community council online here, but we do have a Zachary would like to speak. Go ahead, Zach.
Okay.
Hi, Zachary Dussault speaking in favor of the application. I just want to apologize to the owners that you guys have to deal with all of this regulation surrounding alcohol sales. It's very much a Utah problem. And only we would have 6 different definitions for a place where you can get a drink at a business. But I also wanted to address what Crystal said. I think that the restriction for outdoor space for drinking is kind of excessive and maybe should be looked at getting removed from the CB zoning ordinance. I also wanted to address one of the neighbors' complaints of potential noise impacts. I actually live right next to a bar, and one of the trade-offs that you have when you have a late night operating bar is you do have to deal with a little bit of noise, but that also makes up for it by what's known as eyes on the street. And a bar is very unique in that its operating hours are outside of normal business hours, and it keeps people around your neighborhood at odd hours. Yes, that might seem like an inconvenience, but it also deters theft, it deters vagrancy, and having people outside around your neighborhood at those late hours, it does make you feel more safe and secure. It's not like you're walking through a ghost town. So that's just another important thing to keep in mind with outdoor dining specifically and outdoor drinking, is that the more people you have out and about, the less likely there is for crime and vagrancy. So just in favor of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
That is appears to be all we have for public comments.
You have no emails, Wayne?
No emails on this, no.
All right. Seeing no further public comment, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion or for additional questions.
I'm sorry, this is Andres. I missed that portion of the question about the coronavirus situation currently. What was the response to that concern?
Didn't hear a question. Was there a question about coronavirus?
Well, no, I think that was related to Crystal's question to David about the ordinance.
So the answer is?
We are limited in the CB and I believe CN zoning districts for how big a patio can be associated with a outdoor dining. I mean, that would take an ordinance change through council to actually change that.
Okay. Andres, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm ready to make a motion if that's appropriate.
Yes, it is, Sarah. Please go ahead.
Based on the findings and analysis in the staff report, testimony and discussion at the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission approve the conditional use application for a bar establishment located at approximately 850 East, 900 South, as presented in the petition, PLN PCM 2020-00558, with the conditions of approval listed in the staff report.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Sarah and a second by Maureen. Is there any further discussion?
Actually, the second was by me, Amy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Amy.
Okay.
We must sound alike.
Oh, Maureen you were leaning in like
Yeah, well,
you were getting ready to, Amy just beat you, that's all. Okay, thank you. So the motion is by Sarah and the second was by Amy. Is there any further discussion? So I'm going to go to a vote. Maureen?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
Okay. Carolyn? Carolyn, you're muted. I'll come back to you, Carolyn.
Carolyn, I just unmuted you.
We're voting? Okay, I'll come back to Carolyn. Matt?
Yes.
Andres?
Yeah, it seems things are staying the same, so I will vote yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Crystal?
Yes.
Carolyn, do we have you now for your vote? Okay. The motion passes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 7 in favor, 1 abstention from Carolyn, and so we'll move on to item number 3.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, and we all enjoy the tap house. So, okay. Emerald Townhomes Plan Development Design Review and Preliminary Subdivision at approximately 833 West Emerald Avenue. It is a plan development, a design review, and a preliminary subdivision. There are 3 case numbers associated with this application. Case number PLN PCM 2020-00288. Case number PLN PCM 2020-00289. Case number PLN SUB 2020-00347. And it is going to be presented, well, who is presenting this? Oh, Katia. I'm sorry, Katia, of course. Please go ahead.
I will now share. Thank you. I will share my screen so you can see my presentation. And I'm having a little bit of problem. I'm sorry. I am.
Katja, would you like me to share mine and work through your presentation?
Sure. Let me give one more try here. It would be easier for me to. But for some reason, it's not showing on my. Yes, please.
Real quick, Katja, before we begin with your presentation, do you have an applicant that will also be presenting?
Yes, I have Gerald Hall.
I'm sorry?
Gerald.
That's right, it's Jared. Got it.
Jared Hall, sorry. Jared.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and then we'll work through presentation that way.
Okay, thank you.
We'll get there. Hold tight, everybody. All right.
All right, thank you. So, as mentioned before, this is a plan development, a design review, and a subdivision. And it's located at 833 Emerald Avenue. Emerald is located on the Euclid neighborhood. Can I have the next slide, please? The zoning district on this property is a TSA UN, which is Urban Neighborhood Core. This is an existing photograph looking east on Emerald, and the property on your right is the subject property. This home is going to be demolished and replaced with, can I have the next slide, please? It's going to be replaced with 12 units. And what is being requested is a plan development because it will create lots without a public street. And also there will be 2 driveways going into the project. They will access attached garages to these units. And these driveways
I think we've lost Katia.
Hey, Wayne, why don't we, Katja seems having some issues. Katja, we keep losing you.
Okay.
I'm going to suggest that we move and let the applicant make their presentation. And then if there's follow-up questions for staff, we can respond that way if that's okay with the commission.
Yes, let's go. Let's take that action. Thank you. Jared?
Good, I just made you the presenter so you can share your screen.
Excellent. All right, so this is going to be a little bit weird because I normally rely on Katja's presentation for some of the more technical stuff, but I'll try and.
So Jared, can I interrupt you and ask you to state your name, please?
Oh, yes, my name is Jared Hall. I'm the architect on the project.
Thank you.
So my presentation's less technical than Katja's would be. So this is located on Emerald Avenue, which is between North Temple and South Temple and 8th West and 9th West. So kind of right behind the Red Iguana 2 is the kind of easiest way to find it. We are taking one existing lot and subdividing it into 12 townhouse lots. And so one of the things we are requesting is lots without frontage to do these kind of deep townhouses that we need to do a lot over the city. So one of the reasons we do what we do is we're trying to help increase density, but not necessarily do gentrification. So we'll be creating these houses that will be selling for a price point that's less than the one house that's there. So we're going to be increasing the amount of housing by 11 units and not really increasing the price of the unit at all. So we think that's a pretty excellent thing. We have the lots without frontage, we are asking for a modification of the distance between driveways. So the ordinance says they need to be 100 feet apart. Our driveways are only 93 feet apart. We feel between the really light load that these driveways will have, 3 and 6 car garages is all there is, and the super slow speed that Emerald is, we feel it's not a detriment to any public safety, to that small amount of decrease in the separation. The other thing we're asking for is an increase in the amount of stucco allowed. And the only stucco we have is up here on kind of the wrap above the stairs. And so it's technically on the front elevation, but you can't see it from the ground on Emerald. So we feel it's not kind of detrimental to the look of the street. So one of the things noted in Koch's report was that our building is over 30 feet tall and is changing, and that's causing some fire code things, but we're only over 30 feet by 3 inches. So we're in the process of shortening that down to eliminate those fire code problems. Let's see. So those are the major reliefs. Like we, on kind of to help these units engage with the street, we're providing pretty big 5 foot by 9 foot porches on the right on the sidewalk of Emerald. We have the amount of glass that's required in the TSA code on that ground level to provide a lot of kind of transparency. We are using 2 different materials to give some different texture to the facade to create some visual interest there. So the units, we have 12 units and it's on 0.276 acres, which gives us 43.5 units per acre, which the zone here, or the master plan for this area in the core zone, their target is 50, but just because of fire code restraints, we can't get to a building that with that amount of density. So, but we're getting fairly close. So we are also, each of the units that is on Emerald Street, we're providing with a balcony on the street. And here's a better view of kind of where we're using that stucco. And as you can see, you can see it great when you're 30 feet in the air, can't see it from the street. But we're doing that kind of, this area is not the best area right now. So we're trying to do all we can to create some of that liveliness on the street and have different ways that people will be looking on the street, keep on watch out for their neighbors. And that's the end of our presentation. As I said, it's definitely not as technical as Katya's would have been. So.
Thank you, Jared. I think we'll try to go back to Katya now, if that's possible. I don't see her as a, oh, there she is. Okay. Can you, you think you can present now?
Sure. Would you like me to start a presentation or just respond to any questions that you might have?
I think we need the presentation around the issues that we're talking, the plan development, the design review, and the preliminary subdivision. The presentation you were basically about to make. It's helpful.
Okay. I think that Jared needs to unshare his
there we go.
Okay. And now, Wayne, do you mind sharing?
Yeah, I'm changing that roll over to you now, Katya. See if you can share, and if you can't, then we'll go ahead and do it. We'll put it up.
There you go, Katya. Good job.
It looks like it's
Well, for some reason it wasn't showing then. I think Jared has explained a little bit more about the project. Because it's the TSA, the setback, there is no necessary front yard setback, but on the renderings, what it did not show was that there will be some landscaping. So the lots without street frontage will allow this project to have better financing because of FHA reasons. They do not like condominiums as much, and the other options other than having lots not facing the street would be to create apartments or condos. We feel that this project helps meet the city goals and the master plan. The two driveways with less than 100 feet apart give additional, give the possibility of having attached garages to each of the units. The use of stucco is going to be in the rooftop and pretty much will not be visible from the street. And the other reason for this project having to go through design review was because they only had 81 points before it went into this process, and it needs 125 points at least to have this project be approved with, without going to the planning commission as an administrative approval. One of the reasons it did not get the 125 points is because of the scale of this project. It's kind of harder to get points for the TSA, but they do meet all the other zoning requirements. And so we feel that we find that modifications result in a better product and complies with the master plan expansion of for this area. And we feel that the modifications still meet the intent of the design standards. Based on those findings, we recommend approval of the project with the conditions listed on the staff report. I also would like to point out that as far as public input on this project, we got 2 emails from property owners in the area saying that they support this project. One of the comments was that they would like to see one of the driveways maybe be a shared driveway in the future if a future project comes in, and if there is a possibility that for a shared driveway. And one email was from the property owners on the rear of the project of this lot, which is Sprint, owned by Sprint, and where they have some of their equipment in that parcel. And they feel that this project would just increase the possibility of vandalism and garbage being thrown on the parcel. So they are very opposed to having this project being built. And with that, I would like to see if you have any questions that I can respond to it.
Are there any questions about this proposal before I open up the public hearing? Any
Yes.
questions about the technical issues of this proposal?
Yes. So
Amy.
Katja, I want to clarify, I don't think it was extremely clear. Are you stating that on the TSA point evaluation that a mid-density project gets less points, so you reward more points for higher density, and that's why you think it fell short by 40 plus votes or 40 plus points?
No, what I mean is that the possibilities of points that can be received are not as much, just because of the scale of the project. A lot of the points are related to things such as bike racks and showers, different, there's a vast amount of ways to get points for a bigger project, whereas a smaller project, the availability of some of those points are decreased.
So just for clarification, not only is it the density, it's also the fact that it's not commercial. It doesn't have a commercial ground floor, which would mean showers and bike racks and things like that would be appropriate. Right. It's not mixed use, so. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I can jump in just a little bit here. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Wayne.
And just to clarify, there's kind of this, when it comes to the TSA scoring, and some of you on the commission might be newer and not fully aware of how this works, but in the TSA zones, there's kind of a pretty big menu that projects can first choose from, and if it meets certain things in this menu, you get a certain amount of points. And Koch is correct in that smaller projects sometimes have a difficulty being able to choose enough things from that menu to get to the point to where we can just approve that project administratively. The way that the TSA works is that if you get X number of points, the project can't just be an administrative approval through staff. If it doesn't quite get to those points, it automatically requires it to go to the Planning Commission for approval. So it may be one of these things that we want to do in the future with the Planning Commission when we have a little bit of time to fit it on the agenda for maybe some of those of you that are newer, is to just go back and do a little refresher on the TSA scoring, just because we do get a lot of projects that come from the TSA zone.
So Wayne, just for clarification on that, a project like this would not come before us at all, or would it come before us for plan development approval or subdivision approval?
This one would still come to you for the plan development approval. It wouldn't necessarily need to come to you just for a subdivision if it met the zoning standards, but the plan development would require your review and approval.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions about this before we open up the public hearing? Also, I must point out that the TSA menu of design guidelines was placed in the Dropbox for anybody who would like to look at that. So we do have a copy of that in case anybody's got time on their hands during the coronavirus and would like to read the TSA design guideline standards and their scoring. Okay, I'm gonna, do we have any, I'm gonna open it up for public comment now, open the public hearing. Wayne, do we have anybody?
I do not see anybody from the community council, but it appears that Zachary would like to speak. Go ahead, Zachary.
Hi, Zachary Dussault, speaking in favor of the proposal. I just wanted to start out with, if this was on North Temple, 1 block north, I would have a real problem with it not having any commercial aspect in it. But this is kind of like a side street shoot off, so I'm fine with it not having any commercial aspect in the TSA zone. This site's got great access to bike lanes, great access to public transit. It's less than a block from tracks, very easily commutable by a method of transit other than car to and from downtown. And I really don't know what Sprint was talking about with their public comment. I think having people who own property in a neighborhood, if anything, is going to increase more pride in the neighborhood and lead to reduced vandalism and littering. So that's kind of just my 2 cents there, and I'm in support of this, and I don't think that the stucco is a very big sticking point there. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaki. Is there any other public comment, Wayne?
I don't see any other public comments. I think we're good.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion or questions for either Katya or the applicant.
Just a question. Was this project presented to neighborhood, I guess, council, community council, and was there any response if it was?
This was noticed to the Public Grove Community Council, and instead of having a presentation to the Community Council, the Community Council chairperson send out an email to some of the property owners and ask them to give any input that they might have. And that's why we have those 2 emails from the neighborhoods. But they chose not to have a community council presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Just wondering what that second floor on that faces the street, what's happening kind of in that area, and why do the windows look kind of all over the map?
So it's just a design aesthetic that we're going for. There's no like specific reason for it. It really makes the inside spaces sing, so we like it for that, and I think it provides a little something different on that street.
Yeah. I'm sure Amy or others will weigh. I mean, to me, it just looks very much like the side of a building and not really a front. And these buildings look like they're kind of facing in on each other, just drive me nuts. And it's, I don't think it's great for the pedestrian or the side either, but I don't think it's got else feels that way or not.
Nope. So is anybody else?
I'm alone in this meeting for some reason. Usually I'm not.
I also see Matt's viewpoint. At first, I was thinking like like the applicant said, it was part of the design of it, which kind of looked looked nice and modern. But facing the street, yeah, that there is that sense that it's kind of a flat area. It's not necessarily a major point for me, but I do see that point that Matt makes on that street facing area of the project. So.
Well, I don't really have a problem with it, but then my aesthetic sensibility is perhaps a little bit more like the architect's than everyone else's. So I like the simplicity of it. I like the fact that it has 2 clear sets of materials, that there are holes punched within the facade for entrances and for patios, and so I'm seeing a little bit of the disarray of the windows too, but I'm willing to go with it. So do we have any additional comments or questions for the applicant? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Adrian?
Based on the information in the staff report, the information presented and during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission approve PLN PCM 2020-00288, PLN PCM 2020-00289, PLM SUB 2020-00347, 833 Emerald Townhomes Plan Development Design Review and Preliminary Subdivision with the conditions listed in the staff report.
I'll second. This is Crystal.
Thanks, Crystal. We have a motion by Adrian and a second by Crystal. Is there any further discussion before we vote? All right. Maureen?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Agree.
Matt?
Yes.
Andres?
I'll vote yes.
Sarah? Sarah still here?
I'm here.
Is that a yes? Okay.
Yes. I didn't hear you say my name.
Crystal?
Yes.
Okay, the proposal passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, let us move on to item number 4. Deleting special exceptions from the zoning ordinance and associated ordinance changes. This is case number PLN PCM 2020-0606. We did have a work session on this, but this is actually the public hearing.
Thank
Nick.
you. I'm going to repeat some of what was said at the work session because that was the work session and this is the public hearing. Some key points to remember about this proposal and what it does is that it deletes the special exception process, and every existing special exception will be dealt with in one of 3 ways: either allowed by right, no longer allowed, or addressed through another existing process that is more appropriate review process for that particular item. What is a special exception? It's an incidental use of a property or a minor change to a dimensional requirement in the code. Over the years, that's grown and expanded a little bit, but most of them fall within one of those 2 categories. There's 42 different authorized special exceptions in the code. We average about 150 per year. They are approved in one of 3 ways. All of them start with staff, with the exception of new construction in historic districts. And if we can't approve them, then they go to the Planning Commission or the Historic Landmarks Commission. They come mostly from, most of the applications we receive are from 2 different zoning districts, Districts 3 and Districts 5. Districts 3 makes a lot of sense because of the presence of some large historic districts within that council district. District 5 is a little bit of a surprise. We're not quite sure why so many come in from that district, particularly because it's relatively flat and rectangular lots, and there's really not a lot of oddities there, with the exception of it's also one of the oldest parts of the city, and so there's a lot of inline additions and things like that. Surprisingly, are the low numbers that come from District 7, which is the Sugar House area. One of the things that this demonstrates is that most of these applications are coming from east of I-15, which really creates some equity issues in how planning resources are applied. And this gets to that a little bit. It takes about 20 hours, staff hours, to review an application. That includes getting all the noticing, reviewing for completeness, zoning checks, routing for review by other departments when necessary, producing staff reports and writing letters and all that stuff. And it equates to about the equivalent of 1.5 FTEs per year processing these. The application fees cover only about 40% of the cost if the person reviewing it is one of our associate planners. That decreases all the way down to about 18% if it's one of our senior planners. And so all of these are being subsidized by the general fund. and that includes property taxes, sales taxes, et cetera. In the reasons why we want to change this, I've talked a little bit about the geographic equity, and what it does is that it prevents us from applying our staff resources to broader, bigger, growth-related needs of the city, because we have to process these applications. And so it takes away that equivalent staff time to focus on what benefits a single property owner versus what the community as a whole needs. It helps simplify the code. One thing that we're constantly hearing is that our zoning and our processes are pitting neighbor versus neighbor, and this is the perfect example of what that means, because one neighbor may not know what to expect next door when they have so many exceptions, and we can't necessarily explain all the possibilities when we are asked because of how broad the exceptions are. And it also helps us improve and make zoning reform easier, because we're dealing with less processes in our code and less, the higher number of exceptions, the more things that you have to worry about. The key changes, first off, in historic districts, the Landmarks Commission has the authority to modify bulk, mass, et cetera, through the special exception process. Instead of requiring the special exception application and the required applications within the historic district, we are granting this authority through those other applications. So it helps simplify that process by eliminating the need for an additional application, and the Landmarks Commission retains all the authority that they previously had. One of the big ones that we're looking at are grade changes in retaining walls. This is most prominent up in the foothills. The picture on the left is what's possible with a special exception. That's about, I think at the highest point, right around a 23-foot retaining wall. The change would require a stepping, so it's more of in line with what's on the right. Building heights in residential districts would be based on the development pattern of the block. Again, HLC retains their authority. Accessory structure height, this is something that we talked about at the work session. There would be no change to a by right allowance, but if you have a taller principal building, you can go taller with your accessory building. One of the things the Planning Commission asked us to do was to put a cap on how tall instead of just a straight 75%. And so we added an up to of what equates to about 25% in that zoning district. So for example, if you're in an R1 district and you can go up to 17 feet, the new change is up to 21 feet if it's no greater than 75% of the height of the principal structure. And setbacks must increase accordingly. The use of accessory buildings right now, if you wanted to use a shed or an outbuilding as an office, a hobby shop, or a fitness room, or a changing room for a pool, technically you have to go through a special exception process. We know these things happen and people aren't going through it. And this will basically allow that use by right. Inline additions are another thing that the Planning Commission at the work session asked us to look into, allowing for side yard additions. We allowed that, we added that. So we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail. Everything else stays the same. Second story additions would have to comply with setbacks. Non-complying buildings. This is actually a really important key portion of this for the planning division, because we have to administer and deal with all kinds of issues related to non-complying structures. More than half, in fact, I think it's close to like 90% of all our single family homes were built at a time that had different zoning rules than what exists now, and many of those are non-complying. And so we have to make all kinds of judgment calls on what's allowed and what's not. And this helps make that easier for us to do at the staff level instead of having to send somebody through a process. Front yard parking was another thing that the Planning Commission asked us to find a way to allow in limited situations. And so this proposal does that. It clarifies that side yards have to essentially be blocked by buildings or non-existent, and there's not an access to the rear yard. And this proposal establishes some minimum dimensions for that as well, to keep cars from blocking sidewalks and other things. So it would be a very limited application. Most of the properties in the city that don't have off-street parking already that are residential in nature are in the historic districts. So even though this would be allowed, it still would require a certificate of appropriateness within those districts. The big one that's turned out to be fairly complicated to figure out are ground-mounted utility boxes. Right now, someone can get, through new development, they can build on 100% of their site if the zoning allows it. Oftentimes, they're forgetting to add where their utility boxes and transformers are going to go. And so what happens is that they end up asking or going through the special exception to use the right-of-way. And so this would prohibit that. And it would require the ground-mounted utility infrastructure to be on private property for new development. It adds some setback requirements, access requirements for the utility, requires the utility approval of the location, and some screening requirements if they're in front or corner side yards. There are limited situations where these would still occur in the right of way. And I should have used a different picture that shows how ridiculous it can be with how many utility boxes are there. But in instances where there's an adaptive reuse of an existing building and there is no physical way to put the transformer on the private property, then we would potentially allow that to go in the right of way. There are some requirements in terms of, and similar to if utility box is serving the broader neighborhood and it's a citywide type of thing. So there's requirements for spacing from trees. They can't impact other infrastructure. And if the city has already identified a future right-of-way change along that street, then it's subject to being able to still accommodate that. So for example, if we were on 900 South, or where we haven't completed the full 9 line, if somebody were to come in and propose to put a utility box in that right of way, we probably would say no to it because it could impact our ability to provide to finish that 9-line trail. As far as community input, this was sent out to all of the community councils and recognized organizations. It was also sent out to AIA Utah. We put it online. We've had 176 unique visits to the online open house info, which we think is a pretty high number, considering if we were to hold an in-person open house, we would probably get less than a dozen people coming to even learn about the proposal. The public has identified a number of issues, and we've identified a number of issues through various enforcement activities that have come to light over the past 6 months while this is started. So I'm going to go through some of these now. Outdoor dining impacts. This section was fairly messy, confusing, and because in zones like the CN zone, which is shown in the picture, you need a special exception if you're in a required front yard, which this is a required front yard. And this was an approved project, but and now those would still be allowed. The only difference is that there would be a 10-foot setback when the outdoor dining is next to a residential property. So in this case, the rear of this property is next to residential, but because the outdoor dining's in the front yard and the front yard is not adjacent, it wouldn't apply. So, and then we added some hours of that outdoor music can be played. Right now it's limited only by decibel level, which is really difficult for us to enforce. And so there's some hours of operation when they are adjacent to a residential zone as well. Inline additions, this is where the Planning Commission recommended finding a way to allow this. And so what the code is written right now says is that you can do an inline addition if your side yard does not meet the required setback as it is now, provided that it's up to 20% of the length of the wall and it's single story in nature. So for example, if you had a 40-foot long wall along that side of your house, that could be extended up to 8 feet at the same setback. If it's greater than that, it has to meet the required setback as it exists today. We did get a request from some local architects who do a lot of work in our existing neighborhoods, and they were suggesting that the Planning Commission consider that be increased up to 50% with a max of up to 16 feet. And their argument is that this would allow for an additional room, not just a small hallway or an extension to an existing room. And that helps particularly single-family homes to expand as needed by the property owner. And then in that same example, a 40-foot wall could be extended up to 16 feet in length along the setback. We've also received some comments about vintage signs and expanding where they can go if they are used as art. And so the request was from the Sugar House Community Council. Right now in the Sugar House Business District 1, you can put a sign on your property as art. So for example, unfortunately we lost this sign, but the Scenic Motel sign could be relocated into one of these districts as a piece of artwork. It may not be at all related to the future use or the existing use on a property. But in the Sugar House Business District 2, which might be next door or across the street, it couldn't be placed there. And so because there is a desire to protect and preserve these signs, that there was this recommendation to increase that. And as we looked at it, we decided at the staff level that there's some other similar intensity zones where this could work as well. And so we added the form-based zones that are mixed use and also the TSA zones, which were excluded from that vintage sign regulation. The next thing was the location of mechanical equipment. The proposal initially would have prevented it within 4 feet of a side or rear property line. We did get some comments that, well, maybe it's okay if it goes next, if it's closer to a property line, if the adjacent use is a driveway or a parking lot or an accessory building and it doesn't impact anybody. And we thought that was a good idea, so we wrote that into the code. Excuse me. We put that into the code as well. I should say that the Landmarks Commission did review this at a public hearing 2 weeks ago, and they recommended that the city approve this as well. So we have the public hearing tonight. Then we'll start the transmittal process and send this on to the city council. And that is the end of my presentation. And now I need some water.
Okay, thank you, Nick. So, anybody have any questions for Nick once he recovers from?
Yeah, I do.
So much? Go ahead, Amy.
Nick, can you go back to the additional height for accessory structures and kind of spell it out for me? Is this height limit going to go off of what the existing structure is or the existing zoning height? So I'm getting at, would you allow for extra height above the zoning if the primary structure was non-conforming in height?
So it's based off the existing structure, not what's allowed in the zone. So, and then there's that cap, which is what the Planning Commission asked us for. So say you had a 30-foot tall single family home, which that picture I showed was. Right now, under the current rules, you could go up to 17 feet in height in that zone. If there were other taller accessory structures around, you could potentially get a special exception to go taller than that. If there's not, then you're stuck with the 17 feet. What this proposal does is that it allows you to increase that up to a height of 21 feet, provided your setback increases 1 foot for each foot in height. So
provided your setback increased, the setback of the entire accessory building or the setback of the additional height?
The building.
So 1 foot of setback equals 1 foot in height up to 21 feet?
Yes. So right now, the current setback for accessory buildings is 1 foot. So it can be as close as 1 foot to a property line.
Okay.
And you can build 17 feet at that. If you were to build a 21-foot high accessory building, that would increase by 4 feet, because an additional 4 feet, because it's 4 additional feet taller. So then that setback becomes 5 feet instead of just
And
the
this
water.
is related to the height of the existing building, not the zoning.
Right. So if the existing building is only 18 feet high, you only are going to get 17 feet.
Okay. Is there, I mean, I know there was the public comment from the architect regarding that, but I guess I'm concerned with, then we're just increasing non-conforming heights over and over when we allow that. So can you kind of speak to that for me?
Well, yeah. So sorry, I get a lot of feedback right now from somebody, but so if it's allowed by the code, it's not non-conforming, and so if it's an existing structure and it's over height, it stays. It wouldn't be allowed to be made taller because they
No, totally. I understand that. I think what I'm trying to clarify in my head is that if we have a non-conforming height building, that will stay because they're not changing that. But if we allow additional height for an accessory building based on the height of that non-conforming primary structure, then are we then just instituting more non-conformance in height for future? You know, we're just making it worse, is what I'm wondering. But if it's not a really wide scale issue, that's something else. I mean, do you have an idea of how many non-conforming height buildings we have in primary, like residential buildings?
We have a lot.
Yeah, so I guess I'm concerned with taking the benchmark for the height of an accessory building off of a primary structure that is a non-conforming height, then we're just exacerbating the non-conformance because we're allowing it to continue.
So I think, Amy, can you mute yourself while I talk? I'm getting all kinds of feedback and I can't even thank you. So I think what that comes down to really though is that just because something's non-conforming as to height doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing, right? A lot of the Victorian homes in our city that are 2-story, maybe 30 feet tall, 35 feet tall. And I think we want to I think one thing that helps maintain that is if we're maintaining that character and that scale. So just because it's over height doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad situation. And I think that's where there's maybe some, I can see where you're coming from that. I'm not overly concerned with it. I think what we're hearing mostly about, we haven't heard much about the height with this proposal, but what we have heard in the past with proposals to increase the height of accessory buildings is how that second story is used. And so one of the things that's why we increased the setback to address some of those issues. But I don't know that it's going to be that big of a concern if you go from 17 to 21 foot and you're increasing the setbacks.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions for Nick? Any other concerns with this? Excuse me, I'm sorry. Questions before we go to public hearing? So I'm going to open up the public hearing now. And Wayne, do we have people who would like to speak to this?
We do. Let's first start with, well, it's a citywide issue, so we don't have a specific community council representative, but we do have Cindy Cromer who would like to speak. Cindy,
Okay,
can you hear us?
Hi, Cindy Cromer here. The issue that I mentioned to the Landmarks Commission was the lack of public notice once the changes become a right. And I indicated then that I was entirely supportive of reducing the number of perfunctory staff reports. They're really a huge burden. My comments tonight are unusually abstract for me, but I want to talk about the nature of opposition to land use changes There are people who are opposed to any change at all. Sometimes people think I'm like that. There's a second group of people who oppose what they anticipate to be negative consequences, often unintended or unanticipated. And I hope that I'm usually in that group. And there's a third group of opposition that has people who are upset because they just didn't know about the change. And those are the folks that I'm concerned about here, where all of these things that have been special exceptions, and there are a lot of them, all of a sudden find out that their neighbors have these things by right. And of course, this is a pretty geeky topic. It has not had a whole lot of participation at the community council level. The second point I want to make is that, this is very abstract for me, is that over time, views associated with special exceptions have changed dramatically. An example is outdoor dining. 30 years ago, you would have thought that it was end of civilization as we know it if a fly landed on someone's food at an outdoor dining venue. And our views on that have just changed. So if we're changing the things that are usually pretty perfunctory by today, then how do we get to incorporate the evolving views of appropriate land uses as they change over time? That is way more conceptual than I usually am. Thanks.
And we have Zachary. Go ahead, Zachary.
Hi, Zachary Dussault speaking in favor of the proposal. I love getting conceptual. I think this is one of those great opportunities for that. I like seeing these proposals that help streamline the commission and the department's work. I'd like to see more of them, such as this and the parking ordinance revision, which is finally about to receive a city council hearing. I'm supportive of all of these efforts of, frankly, making these meetings shorter, making less fights out of, frankly, very small potatoes, like a few feet here and there on accessory use. I don't really think warrants a 200-person petition from all of your neighbors and calling you a slumlord for wanting a few extra feet. And I think that the more that these are set as rules and less as special exceptions that people have to go before the planning commission to receive, and all of their neighbors get notice around them that, oh, your neighbor wants a special exception for extra height in their backyard. I think by making these black and white rules, that's going to cut down on a lot of that conflict, and hopefully make these meetings a little bit more productive and focused on bigger projects that have more importance to city goals. So I'm just in favor of all these systemic changes, and I hope we've got more of them coming down the pipeline. Thank you.
That is all the comments that we have, Madam Chair. Sorry, you are on mute. There you go.
Thank you. Yes. So is there, if there's no more public comments, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Are there any questions for Nick? Is there any additional discussion about this proposal?
Madam Chair, can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
One of the comments made was about people who formerly were getting notice about things who won't now. And I think it's important to keep in mind that, one, who was noticed, so immediate neighbors. This doesn't have a broad noticing requirement for special exceptions. It's next door and across the street, primarily, and then the recognized organizations get an email notice as well. And it's important to keep in mind the percentage of these projects that are approved. So almost 100% of them do get approved right now without any sort of input from neighbors or any response, or coming to the planning commission. Landmarks commission sees more because new construction generally has to go to the commission. Planning commission sees far less, maybe a handful per year on your agendas. And the ones that are the most controversial are ones that are going away. So, for example, the additional residential building height, you have to meet the code or match the development pattern on your block. And two, which is not part of this, but will be coming because of it's more complex than what we initially thought, and it's coming separately, but will come in January, are fences in the front yards. Those are routinely denied. And so those regulations would be changed. So there's just a max there. Now there will be some exceptions in other yards and for other types of uses. We don't want to limit the fence height at a golf course driving range for obvious reasons. So that will be coming, but I think it's important to make note of those two facts.
Thank you.
I have a question for Nick. So of all the public comments that you've gotten, are those going to be packaged and sent to City Council along with whatever recommendation we make?
Yes, they are. And they're actually in your staff report. We haven't had a lot of actual comments on this. What we have done, which is a little bit unusual for us, but something that we've made note of, is that we have heard about particularly enforcement issues that have been identified and reported to the city that relate to something that is a special exception. We've added standards to help reduce those things that the people are complaining about. And so instead of saying, well, you can go get a special exception for this, we've added things like the setbacks for outdoor dining when you're next to residential and noise restrictions and things like that. So we've added qualifying provisions where it's appropriate.
Okay. Thank you.
One question for you.
Go ahead, Andres. Yeah.
Thank you. So will neighbors still get a postcard or something in the mail when there is something in their neighborhood that is going to be going through the process as they do now, or will that change?
So that changes because this process is going away. It doesn't impact any other process that in our code. So those things that are going through another process, they'll still be subject to the notification requirements. But because the changes that we're making are fairly incidental and minor in nature, or the special exceptions that were authorized were incidental or minor in nature, that would not be retained. There would not be any kind of a courtesy notice sent out to neighbors that something next door is happening. Just like it would be for any kind of permitted use that doesn't require any sort of process.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So Nick, in your in the request from the mayor, I mean, it mentions that, well, let me find it. That there are more than 40 special exceptions authorized in zoning ordinance. You're only changing just a handful of them, right?
So every one of those will be changed in some way. A lot of them are just being moved to another process. So all the non-complying stuff, the unit legalizations, things like that are just being moved to another. The landmark stuff, which accounts for a big chunk of the special exceptions, are just going through another process. And there are some that are just going away. Like I said, with the fence height, the additional building height, the grade changes, excuse me, and retaining wall height. Those things are just, we're not going to allow those exceptions anymore. You have to meet the stepping and other things in the code.
So there are quite a bit. If you go through, Nick's quick guide in your staff report, it's a list.
Can you clarify the word quick in this regard?
Well, it
It's
is
quicker
a
than reading
listing.
the
It's a listing.
1,400 lines of text.
It's a listing of all the different things that are actually being affected.
No, I do see that. It's, yeah, I'm being sarcastic.
There are quite a few of them, and so I think that I did go through the ordinance and all of this stuff too, and didn't find a huge amount of things that I was very concerned about. So I think this is a really great goal to have, and this is a really ideal situation for us to try to improve. So, are there any other comments or?
I have a small
opinions?
question.
Yes.
Under the home daycare where it says permitted or conditional, is it the number of children that determines if it's just flat out permitted or if it's a conditional use, or what determines that?
That's correct. We actually are working on a pretty broad daycare text amendment so that we have, so it's easier to open a daycare in the city that will further address all of those issues. That should be coming to you in the next few months.
Great. Okay. So this is a vote to recommend the change to the city council. Not a vote to approve. So do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Based on the information in the staff report, the information presented and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council approve the proposed text amendment, PLN PCM 2020-00606, special exception text amendment.
I'll second.
Okay, I think that was Maureen. We'll call it Maureen. Okay.
It was.
I think Maureen beat Amy to the buzzer that time. Okay, so I have a motion from Adrian and a second from Maureen. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to take a vote, starting at the bottom with Crystal.
Yes, and my comment addition would be I look forward to when we also take ADUs out of the conditional use process.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yes.
Andres?
Yeah, here's to hoping that things go smoother. So I'll vote yes.
Okay, thank you. Matt?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Agree.
Adrian?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously to send this forward to the City Council with approval, with recommending approval. So is there any additional business? If not,
Madam Chair, I would just maybe remind the commissioners of our next meeting, which is not our normal schedule, being December 2nd.
thank you, Madam Chair. And we also have a meeting on December 9th.
Yep.
We have two meetings right in a row in the month of December.
And then you're going to take a month off.
And then we take a month off. According to the planning director, we can then take a
And then I believe we will pay the price in January, but yes.
Well, just an interesting tidbit of information. In 2020, you will have heard 113, will have had 113 public hearings. And if you're wondering how that compares to 2019, you did 79 in 2019, which was the busiest application year we've ever had. So you're up 43%, which is, I think, amazing considering you also lost 2 meetings to natural disasters. So You guys should pat yourselves on your back for your dedication.
I think we should all get a raise.
I think we're gonna get a little star we can wear that says Super Commissioner.
That's right.
That's right. We need a star.
And Crystal, you'll be glad to know that the conditional use process is on deck for the next round of this, so.
For the ADUs. That's
So
good.
excited.
Okay, well, I think we're all in favor of that. Okay, so I'm going to call this adjourned, and thank you all very much for coming, and we'll
Thanks,
see you in
everybody.
December.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.